I have long been interested in the Scopes trial, since my mother forced me to watch the abominable film Inherit the Wind when I was young. The movie made me squirm. I wanted to find out the real story because I did not enjoy seeing Christians portrayed as idiots, and I knew there must be more to the story. Well, I did learn more. In 2008, I brought my family to Dayton, Tennessee on sort of a pilgrimage to find the answers. The story began in 1925 as the American Civil Liberties Union grew concerned over a number of anti-evolution bills that were being introduced in various states forbidding public schools from teaching the evolution of man. The ACLU looked for a case it could use to assist in their campaign to eradicate these bills in hopes of getting a ruling declaring these types of bills as unenforceable. They chose Tennessee as a location because the Butler Act of 1925 had recently been passed, making it unlawful for any teacher paid with public funds to teach a theory denying divine creation in favor of man descending from animals. When the ACLU advertised in newspapers throughout the state in hopes of recruiting a teacher willing to be part of their test case, George Raplia from Dayton, Tennessee, saw the ad. And with it, he saw an opportunity for his town to gain national attention, which could be good for his mining business. Raplia recruited John Scopes, who had subbed for the biology teacher for 2 weeks. While Scopes had not actually taught evolution in that class, he did use a textbook, Hunter's Civic Biology, that presented evolution, so that was sufficient for him to be accused of the crime of teaching evolution. The ACLU paid all expenses for the defense and chose famed lawyer Clarence Darrow to defend Scopes. Understanding the significance of the trial, the prosecution selected William Jennings Bryan for their team. Both men were highly prominent in their spheres of influence, yet the two men were different in so many respects. While Bryan was a conservative Christian who had run for president 3 times and served as Secretary of State under Wilson, Darrow was an agnostic criminal lawyer who was intent on undermining religious fundamentalists by his participation in the trial. The trial commenced on Friday, July 10th, to a town overflowing with reporters from around the country as well as fundamentalists and curiosity seekers. It took place in the Rhea County Courthouse, and from the beginning, the case took on an atmosphere of circus and carnival. Reporters made this cafe their hangout. The trial was referred to quite famously as the monkey trial, while a trained monkey named Joe Mendy enthralled spectators around town. A local hotel placed a gorilla in its lobby. The New York Times reported that many in Dayton had obvious mental irregularities of a religious tendency. Although the legal issue involved was merely whether Scopes had violated the Butler Bill by teaching evolution, the reality was that the creation account in Genesis was on trial itself. As Bryan declared at a church service on Sunday morning, 2 days after the start of the trial, now the facts of religion and evolution would meet at last in a duel to the death. As the court opened on Monday morning, in this room, a prayer was offered by a local clergyman, urging God to preserve his sacred word against the attack. On the other hand, Darrow boldly stated, "The fires of bigotry and hate are being lighted. This is a bold attempt to destroy learning as was ever made in the Middle Ages." Believing that evolution was scientific fact, Darrow tried to make the case that as a fact, it must be taught in schools. Scientific evidence supporting evolution was not presented directly to the jury verbally in most cases, but primarily presented in written statements, with references to the controversial Java man, the Piltdown man, and Haeckel's theories of embryology, as well as geological theories that the world is millions of years old. Darrow failed to make a case proving evolution to be true. In fact, in the years since the case, it has been stated that the evidence provided at the Scopes trial is no longer even considered evidence of evolution. A turning point in the trial occurred when Dudley Field Malone, the other chief defense lawyer, challenged Bryan, using his own words from 20 years earlier on Thomas Jefferson's philosophies of religious toleration. Malone spoke so eloquently that Bryan responded wearily, saying, "Dudley, that was the greatest speech I ever heard." Many believe that a desire to salvage his position may have been what prompted Bryan to agree to what came next. In a final attempt to undermine Christian beliefs, Darrow called Bryan to the witness stand as an expert witness on the Bible on the seventh day of the trial, and Bryan agreed. Under pressured questioning, Bryan consistently expressed belief in the actual accounts in the Bible until Darrow began asking about the six-day creation in Genesis. Bryan held the common view that the 6 days referred to were 6 ages of time and not literal 6 24-hour days. He finally conceded that the 6 days of creation may have lasted millions of years. Because Bryan compromised on this key facet of biblical creation in Genesis, he helped make Darrow's case in support of the millions of years old view of the Earth's age and thus evolution. Sadly, William Jennings Bryan did not have in his arsenal the kind of scientific evidence backing up young Earth creationism that we have today. Many organizations have done their work to back up young Earth claims as science. The science is overwhelming in favor of the notion that the Earth is thousands of years old and not millions or billions. Organizations like Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries International have been instrumental in giving Christians actual science to back up the Bible, so believers can defend their position with facts rather than a simple "because the Bible says so" approach. But William Jennings Bryan did not have at his disposal the strong scientific defense of creationism, as he found himself defending Genesis in the Rhea County Courthouse that day. So, he was ineffective. The trial ended when Darrow asked Judge Ralston to find his client guilty of the charge, thus denying Bryan the opportunity to express final sentiments. While some heralded the trial as the culmination of the evolution-creation debate, it was actually just the beginning of the debate that is still ongoing. Years later, a fictionalized version of the trial called Inherit the Wind opened on Broadway in 1955, followed by the movie of the same name in 1960. The movie was heralded when it premiered in London in July, 25 years after the trial. This inspired a celebration in Dayton and featured the return of John Scopes to town, who was given a parade and a key to the city. The movie managed to recruit major film stars and was released in 7 countries before its release in the United States. Quite notably, it was the very first airline in-flight movie ever shown in the world's history. A captive audience indeed. The movie completely mischaracterizes the events and people involved in the trial. Merely historical propaganda intended to discredit Christianity. The movie makes a mockery of Bryan while holding up Darrow as an enlightened humanitarian and hero. The use of the song Old Time Religion provides a constant reminder throughout the film that the trial represents what evolutionists consider a battle between science and religion. Tragically, the movie, rather than the facts, has become the narrative that has overtaken reality and the average person's understanding of the Scopes trial. One can see the bias in academia of the time in the experience of Faye Cooper-Cole, anthropology professor at the University of Chicago and scientific witness for the defense in the trial itself. After the trial, a Southern Baptist conference sent resolutions to the university protesting Professor Cole. The university's president confessed that the university had had more demands for his removal than they'd ever had for any other man on the faculty. How did the Board of Trustees of the university respond? They gave Professor Cole a raise. Additionally, his classes had to be moved to large lecture halls due to the huge increase in registrations for his classes, the man who had defended Scopes. Rather than an issue of evolution versus creationism, a larger issue was one of local versus government control of education. Evolutionists may have claimed at that time to want the freedom for all perspectives on origin to be taught, as they fought against restrictions against their own position. But we now have an educational system where the central government controls what is taught at the local level to a great extent, and where the creation perspective is often silenced, with evolution being taught as fact. The tables have turned, and the victims are all Americans who are losing educational liberty in favor of big government and centralized control over increasing aspects of our lives.